Robin, thank you so much for joining us on Leadtail TV. I really appreciate it. Good to see you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's good to be here. Thank you, Bryan.
You got it. You got it. I'm going to jump right in. I know that analyst relations can be one of those make it or break it initiative for partners or vendors or clients. I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit about why it belongs in a B2B marketer's toolkit.
Yeah, that's the great $1 million question, right? I think to answer that, the core is a little explanation of what analysts are and how they influence the market, because that then leads to why they're important, especially. So let me just give me a couple of minutes a minute or two to explain that. So analysts are these third party, Gartner, Forrester, IDC, people are probably familiar with them. And they are experts in a particular domain or a particular industry or a particular geography. They have the expertise at that. And then they use that expertise to guide buyers. So they know the market and they help buyers make decisions on technology. And they use that knowledge to help vendors market better and position themselves better. And then they use those roles also to influence investors. So they have all these different roles that make them very impactful in the market. And actually, data has shown that 75% of enterprise technology decisions involve analysts, either directly talking to analysts or reading their research. They have an impact, and that can't be ignored. And industry analysts are the single most influential force in the B2B market, tech market space. So what happens is every mid-size and up vendor has people that focus on AR. They might have a person or a team or a big team, and they're working with the analysts, and they're part of those conversations between them, the analysts, the customers. And if you're not there, other players are competing in a playing field that doesn't include you. So that's a big miss. So that's why it belongs in the B2B marketer's toolkit.
It's such and it feels to me like, and I've got very limited experience in this, but it's so intriguing to me because it feels like it's such an in-depth, like relationship and knowledge of the industry and knowledge of the right players and knowledge of, so many different variations and variables to be able to make this work, that it's like one of the most intricate things that, is out there. And, how does this process work? Where do you start when you're working with a new client, and what are the kind of windy roads, if you will, one, or at least one or two of them that just kind of like play into this process?
Yeah, excellent. And it's good that you acknowledged how nuanced and complex that space is, because I have to say I am perpetually bored and I'm never bored with analyst relations. It stimulates me all the time. I'm always learning something new. It's a very challenging and nuanced space. How the process works with my clients when I have a new client, the biggest, my mantra that I'm always saying is that you never do analyst relations for the sake of analyst relations. That does nobody any good. So the first thing we do with a client is understand their business priorities. AR has to support that, support your must-dos in order for it to pay off. So if you're expanding into a new market, launching new branding, messaging, a new product, coming out with something disruptive, doing something with GTM, analysts can be used to drive progress. And that's what really matters. So we always start by a thorough review of their plans, interviewing their key stakeholders to understand what's important, what's in the DNA of this business, what's important that they have to do. Then we can look and say, okay, now knowing all that, what do we want to use AR as a tool to help push, to help drive? What needles do we want to move with AR? So we build OKRs. So we look at objectives for analyst relations and key results and build that out. We look at metrics. AR is notoriously difficult to measure, and people grasp at all sorts of straws. And on my team, we like to look at long-term objectives, and that might be eventually to get on a Magic Quadrant or wave or position well. And we break that down, if that's a goal, for example, into measurable steps. We want to engage with the right analysts. We want to have clear, tangible objectives for every briefing and inquiry. And we want to measure the sentiment score with that analyst. And how do we do on each engagement? And how are we moving that analyst relation to the next phase that we want to get it to? So we're very purposeful about understanding at an analyst, individual human being level, what we want to do and how that analyst can support our business objectives. And then we do all kinds of things like identify the most important analysts and reports. We do competitive analysis. We want to know who's in bed with whom, in the market, what analysts are talking about which of your competitors and who's working with them. And then we just get to execution. We just plan out all the activities, all the briefings, inquiries, advisory sessions, content marketing projects, events, we plan all that out. And then we just get everybody ready to rock and roll. We train and coach the spokespeople, build briefing decks, run trial briefings. And that's a pretty intensive 6 or sometimes 8 weeks that we do with a new client to get them going.
There's so many different layers of this. Do you know what you are heading for before you even start? Like, is it the Magic Quadrant, the thing? Is that the ultimate kingdom or top of the kingdom, if you will? Or is it usually something like, hey, let's just get here first and then we'll see where we are and then move to the next level? Like, where are you shooting for? Is there one place or many places?
Good question. So it depends, like all great answers, it depends. Because if you're in a space that is covered by a Magic Quadrant, and there's about 100 or 150 Magic Quadrants in the world, there's like 10,000 technology sectors, right? So it's not, there's not going to be a big report for every sector. So the first thing we look at is, are there reports in this space that we can qualify for and get into? And if that's the case, then that's like the first step, or, not the first step, but a clear step along the route that we want to get to. And for many companies, it's not about a Magic Quadrant. It's really about, or a wave or a MarketScape. Those are other key reports in the market. It's really about how they can develop the relationships with the analysts that can lead to great things like recommendations, because an analyst loves when they can recommend a hot startup with a disruptive, innovative idea, because that raises their capital. Now they're giving their clients something juicy, something important. And analysts love to hitch on your star. If they see a rising star, they want to be the first to talk about it. So there's a natural interest that analysts have in the startup community in particular.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So there's so many different facets to this, and I love it because you're looking at the core of it, relationships.
Yes.
Now, and then you start branching out. What happens if the product or service is not in alignment, but you see the vision of where it could be? Is there? Do you know what I mean by that? Like, if a product or a service doesn't really have a place there yet, but that they could if they just tweak this, add this, built this, and now all of a sudden they become worthy of being there. Now, does that define what you might take on in a client, whether they're willing to do that or not? And B, do you find that most are or are not willing to do that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and we deal with this all the time because there's sort of two scenarios. The client may be ahead of where the analysts are thinking because they tend to be on the conservative side. So it may be purely an issue of educating the analysts, getting them excited, showing, proving there's a market, because analysts don't care what vendors say. They care about where there's markets and where there's need for help. They love confusing markets, because that's where people need analysts when there's a lot going on, like in AI right now. You know, there's so much going on that analysts are having a heyday, and actually not even a heyday. They're just so overloaded with queries from end users trying to figure out this phenomenon and how it's going to impact their business. So on the one hand, you have a client who's ahead of the market and is teaching the analysts and bringing them along and bringing them new ideas and shaping their thinking. And that's going to plant seeds for eventual reports and value for them. On the other hand, you have clients that just are mismatched. You know, the analyst is there. They're just seeing the market differently than the vendor does. They're seeing different requirements. They're seeing different objectives, different needs from the clients, from the end user buyers. And then it gets into real relationship management. It gets into how you share factual information, knowledge, proof points to chip away at someone's perception and share with them new ideas and new ways to think about something. So if there's a misalignment, sometimes it's a matter of working towards changing that analyst's opinion. Maybe, you know, you want them to come closer to your vision. And sometimes it's a competitor who's got their ear, and you need to combat that in a nice way.
You know, I love that, you know, you have to know the needs of the other person, and then also figure out what is possible, what's available, what do they need to hear, what do they not need to hear. These are all, you know, like human driven responses that I just don't see, like, you know, a lot of technology being put in place for a very long time for these kinds of nuances that you're talking about. Sorry, I want to take a little bit of a shift and talk about the power of the analyst, because we're moving towards why the analyst should think this is a great thing. Once they believe this is a great thing and they believe in it, they really buy into it. What does that mean for the business or company or product they now have bought into? What's the possibilities that now an analyst can, I mean, it just feels like, okay, we've arrived, and now what?
Yeah, so, you know, going back to what we were talking about before, if there are reports, evaluation reports that pit them against the competitors, and they come out and then the top right-hand corner as the better vendor, that's going to pay off handsomely in the sales process and marketing and getting your name out there. It makes a huge difference, especially, I have to say, the Gartner Magic Quadrant, which is the gold standard of these kind of reports. But that's only the tip of the iceberg, because one of the most interesting things about analysts are those conversations they have between them with buyers, right? Not all analysts do that, but the ones that have buyer consultative advisory are having conversations every day about your space with buyers, with potential, with prospects, and talking about their needs. And they might talk about their technology strategies. They may talk about the kind of solutions that they can look at. And then they may often talk about vendors and vendor selection and even contract negotiation. So those conversations are behind closed ears, closed doors, however you want to say it. They're not, public. And they're talking about vendors all the time. And that can be super influential, especially if you're a smaller vendor. Getting that kind of validation, not only just a mention, but such a validated mention, is very, very powerful. So we try with our clients to get those kind of recommendations We try to get coverage not only in those evaluation reports, but all coverage is good. If an analyst is talking about you, it's positively, it's a great thing, and we want to take advantage of those. But that's probably the impact of an analyst validating you and mentioning you in phone conversations is the thing that you don't see, like you see the tip of the iceberg in the reports.
So taking all this great stuff and the process and the idea of, that you can get yourself to this point to where it's going to do so much potential good for you and for your organization, how do you suggest it gets structured inside the organization? Obviously hiring someone like you to help walk them through it, but there's a lot that goes on, whether it's analyst relations that lives inside the organization or someone that is able to help organize and orchestrate this. How do you integrate it into the overall, whether it's the marketing program or something else, to be able to have these kinds of results?
Yeah. So that's great. That's a great question. And it stimulates me to think about how the different ways that people organize analyst relations. They have somebody, internal or external, that cares for it because they have to have focus on it. It's one of those important but not urgent things that if you don't have focus on it, it gets lost and you don't build up this real impact over time. So most analyst relations programs sit on the marketing team under the CMO somewhere. And I think, in my experience, the less effective programs sit alongside PR under communications, because it makes a lot of sense in some ways. But when it's there, often AR misses out on the most valuable aspect, which is the inbound side. And when I was saying before that these analysts that are researchers and they're experts and they talk to customers, well, they talk to vendors. And that's where they can give vendors feedback, ideas, recommendations. And this is gold. And it can change your business dramatically. Like if the analyst recommends a different messaging approach or some capabilities for your roadmap or new GTM targets, this can have way more impact than even getting a great leadership position on a report. Often the communications role, doesn't prioritize this and push it, because I found most organizations need pushing to make those kind of impacts happen. So the strongest AR programs sit with product marketing, I believe. Product marketing are the ones that can take the advantage of that inbound side because they are in the perch where they can take that input and process it and have more, they're way closer to the product and the strategy. So you want product marketing, product management to be fully involved in the program, not doing a favor by doing a briefing or an inquiry and doing a report submission, which is a lot of work. You want their skin in the game because they're the ones that are going to make the difference. And they're the ones that you want to build relationships with the analysts.
I have two last questions. One is, how did you get into being in this work? I don't think this is something where when you're in elementary school,
right,
you think I'm going to be in analyst relations when I grow up. So,
totally.
but then all of a sudden you see how important it can be and how nuanced it really is. And so how did you get into this work?
That's so interesting. So nobody goes to school to be an analyst relations professional. It doesn't happen. And if you ask 10 AR people how they got into it, you're going to get 11 answers. Everybody's got a different way that it happened for them. For me, I've been in B2B tech marketing my whole career, starting with AT&T back in the day, and had done over the years just about every job one can do in tech B2B marketing, from demand gen, strategic marketing, messaging, everything. And I was in a job in product marketing at one place, and they recognized the need to take their analyst relations program, well, to build an analyst relations program. This company had been pretty reactive and didn't have a proactive program, and they realized they needed one. And they came to me and asked me if I would do AR, and I said, sure. And then I said, what does AR stand for? Because I had no idea what it meant. So I love a challenge, and I jumped in and learned all about analyst relations. I soon felt like I had a home, like I found my thing, if you know what I mean. I had been, the jack of all trades, master of everything. I mean, I was doing everything and didn't have an area that I felt really attached to. But when I started analyst relations, I saw how all of these different experiences I've had, along the years came together into this very complex, nuanced role. And I just jumped in, and I made it that was 15 years ago. And I really made it my specialty. And just really never looked back, because it is eternally interesting, fascinating, challenging.
I can see why. And I can see why everybody has a different story based upon the windy road it takes to get there, and then the windy road the job actually entails. So your last question, I know this may, well, let's make this maybe the easiest / hardest question that you have to answer, which is that you're a songwriter. And I love that, because that, the artistic side of yourself, I'm sure is in a lot of the work you do, but especially in being a songwriter. So tell us about your love of music and how you came to write songs.
Oh, wow. Thanks for asking that. That's great. I started writing songs a few years ago. I had written a few songs in my life, but I kind of fell into it as a COVID hobby. One day in 2021, long story, but I was exposed to a song prompt. These are things that songwriters give themselves, some kind of prompt. And the prompt was "The Last Snow." And I got so interested in that concept. What is the last snow? How do you know it's the last snow? What's the significance of it? I just really got into it because it tickled the part of my brain that loves puzzles and people, right? And my song, so I wrote this song, which is one of my classics, but all my songs are about people and stories. I love just coming up with a character in a situation and digging into the emotions and motivations, like what's driving the character, where does the story go, how does the character and the story develop, and it really actually connects to why I like AR actually, right? I love the overall challenge with AR. You have a vendor with a great story and an analyst that may not agree with you. And how do you build a relationship and change? What are the analyst's motivations? What is the vendor motivations? And how do you change both the analyst perspective and the company's trajectory? It's like endlessly challenging and rewarding, like songwriting is endlessly challenging and rewarding.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I love that, music is such a great part of your life. It's something that I think, as a person who's also a lover of the arts and culture, if we have that balance in our world, and we know that we can always, do these kinds of things, and especially in schools right now, we need it even more so, then it just creates such a more pleasurable balance in our lives. So I can see why that works well for you.
Totally. It does balance my life out really nicely.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure being with you here today, Robin. Thank you
Same.
so much. Thank you. And we will be excited to share your information and share all this information with how people can find you. Your contact information, everything will be in the bio and in the show notes. So we've got all that. And is there anything else that I didn't ask you that you wish I did?
Well, I just realized that I didn't mention that I have a book about analyst relations called Analysts on Analyst Relations, where I decided that it would be really interesting to actually ask analysts what they want from this role, from this analyst relations role. So I have a whole book on how the analyst perspective on all of these aspects of building a relationship and running a program. And it's a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. And so everybody can find that, I'm sure, on Amazon.
Yes.
And again, the name of the book is?
The name of the book is Analysts on Analyst Relations, Practical Secrets for Winning Big.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that we even got a chance to mention it. And it's something that is really cool to know that you actually went direct to the analyst to ask them, what do you want?
Exactly.
And so, hey, why not, right? Thank you so much. Thank you again. And we can't wait to talk with you again soon.
All right. It's been a pleasure, Bryan. Thank you.